to start with is what you guys are familiar with as far as foiling. Remember, the FOIL process is really just distributing, right? What you're doing when you multiply two binomials, okay, and foiling only happens with two binomials, and that is you take the product of your first terms, okay, so that's what the F stands for, so W times W is W squared. Then you take the product of the outer terms. Again, we're just distributing here. Okay, and so that's the O. W times a negative 6 is negative 6W. Then you go and distribute the second term, the 3, and this becomes your inner products. Okay, so that's the I's. 3 times W. Notice I'm vertically stacking my like terms like we did yesterday. And then my final distribution is my last terms. That's what the L stands for. So 3 times a negative 6 is negative 18. And when you combine your like terms, you get W squared, a net of minus 3W and minus 18 for your product. So as I work through this, again, foiling only works when you are multiplying two binomials. But it really is just the distributive property. So there's nothing specific to foiling. You can just call it distributing, because if I'm distributing here, I take the product of my first terms. 6 times 9 is 54, W times W. Go to my outers. 6 times a negative 4 is negative 24. Carry along my W. Go to my inners. 5 times 9 is 45. Carry along the W. And then my last, 5 times negative 4. And so if I combine my like terms, I get my solution, which I'll write up here, 54W squared. Here the difference is 21, so plus 21W, and then minus the 20, and that is my solution. Okay, as I move down to the lower ones, again, same idea here, but you might have different signs. Okay, there's a couple different options that you can use if you are working with the different signs. Okay? If the negative signs for your first term are messing you up, what you can do is, again, I'll give you 3 options. One, you could just FOIL regularly and carry along with it. So negative 8 times negative 8 is positive 64, and then Z squared. My outers, negative 8 times 3 is negative 24. Carry along the Z. My inners, negative 56. Carry along the Z, and my last is positive 21. And so if I do it this way, when I combine straight down my like terms, here I have 20 and 50 is 70, 4 and 6 is 10, 70 plus 10 gives me 80, so I get negative 80 Z. All right, so if you just do it normally, you can still work through it. The signs are going to take care of themselves. If it's difficult for you, or if you are making mistakes with the signs, you can do one of 2 things. In a problem like this, you can look to see if the second terms are positive, you can rearrange the terms if you wanted. So you could think of this as 8 or 7 minus 8Z and 3 minus 8Z. And then you can FOIL it from there. If that helps you without having to deal with the negatives, you get 21 here minus 56Z minus 24Z plus 64Z squared. When you write your answer, you're just going to reorganize them, write them in standard form. So the highest degree first, minus 80Z, and then plus 21. Okay, bless you. The other possible way that you can approach this would be to factor out the negatives so that you're only working with positive leading coefficients. Now, that's a rule that you're going to hear me talk about later. Okay? It's a good rule to have when you're working with factors. And almost every time that when we get to where you're canceling factors and stuff like that, you want to make sure that the non-monomial factors have positive leading coefficients. And if you follow that rule here, the way that it would look is you would take out a negative from your first terms, so 8Z and a minus 7. Take out a negative from your second term, leaving an 8Z and a minus 3. And so if you took out that negative 1 here, again, it's a product or a factor. Oops, I'll write it as a factor. What you could do is this negative times this negative cancel, they become positives. And so when you're multiplying, you can get 64Z squared minus 24Z minus 56Z plus 21. and that also leads to the same answer. You can do it any of those ways, whatever's most convenient for you. But eventually you do want to work with any non-monomial factors. You should get them down into having positive leading coefficients.